Hey everyone, I'm Sean Roberts from Here for Blood, and you're currently listening to the Horror Squad.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Horror Squad podcast. This is episode number 315, where tonight we are going to be talking about Steve's pick, 1998's Disturbing Behavior. I am here, of course, with Steve, which I just mentioned. Todd, unfortunately, will be not with us tonight. I can't remember the reason.
He's in Texas for some reason and
right.
having Texas barbecue, so I'm very jealous. Yeah.
Mm.
Hopefully not fucking scoping a place to live. We'll see. TBD.
TBD, of course. But
Yeah.
hey, I'd be okay with him heading back to Texas. Texas Frightmare Weekend coming up and whatnot. So,
Right.
maybe a place I can crash. But Steve, we have an interview tonight.
We do. We had the pleasure of interviewing Sean Roberts, who is in a new film that's coming out on Screenbox on February 9th called Here for Blood. You're going to hear Joe and I talk about it on What Watched. It's an interesting movie, very surprising movie, and I can't wait for us to discuss it a little bit later. But it's a great interview. Very, very cool guy. You might recognize him from quite a few things. Non-horror, he was on Degrassi: The Next Generation, and he was Rogue's boyfriend in the very first X-Men movie. Very memorable scene there where Rogue figures out her powers while kissing him and stuff like that. But for horror fans, he has a pretty legit streak as well. He was in both Land of the Dead and Diary of the Dead, of course, both Romero films. And he was also Albert Wesker in the Resident Evil film series. So yeah, pretty legit dude and very nice to talk to. So that will be at the end of this episode.
Hell yeah. Yeah, he was awesome. He was a great interview. So definitely stick around for that. We even got into a little Romero with him, which was really cool. So definitely stick around for that. That, of course, once again, we'll talk about on What Watch, but Screenbox, thank you so much for getting us that interview. February 9th on Screenbox, so make sure and go and check that out. Subscribe to Screenbox. It's cheap enough, and you'll hear our thoughts, but I'd say it's worth it for this movie, just, even if you just subscribe for the month. Before we get into What Watch, I do want to mention, of course, a couple of important dates. You're going to keep hearing this until they pass by, but June 7th through the 9th, Living Dead Weekend. That is the big one, ladies and gentlemen. Please come to that. That's going to be awesome. Official Horror Squad podcast meetup. That's where the three of us can actually just chill, and we're not going to be crazy like we are in October with our Hocus Pocus event. So if you just want to come and hang out with us and just kind of mingle and talk to us and have dinner with us and stuff like that, come to Monroeville, Pennsylvania. It is the home of Dawn of the Dead, of course. It is taking place right inside the mall where they filmed the movie. There's going to be a tour we are going to be doing of the filming locations. So come out to that, once again, June 7th through the 9th, Monroeville, Pennsylvania. We are doing the 1 p.m. mall tour on Saturday. So grab your tickets for that. The mall tours definitely sell out. You can probably wait a little longer as far as the weekend passes for the event. But if you do plan on coming, definitely book those mall tour tickets so you can come and join the mall tour with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Join the Discord if you haven't already. You can get all the details of what's going on over on the Discord for Living Dead Weekend. Also, October, big Hocus Pocus event coming up with the cast of Hocus Pocus. Currently confirmed is who we had last year: Omri Katz, Vanessa Shaw, Jason Marsden, and Thora Birch. Of course, the four main cast, but they are bringing a couple of special guests along with them this year, which we haven't announced yet. It should be getting announced very soon. It is going to be a whole weekend of events in Salem, Massachusetts, October 11th through the 13th. It's going to be an awesome time. So hopefully you can make it out to either one of those events. We look forward to it. We also individually are planning to go to attend some cons and stuff this year. We'll mention that the closer it gets to those. So we hope to see you at any of the upcoming events. Alrighty. Steve, let's get into it. What you been watching?
All right. So my first film this week is a movie I watched because, unfortunately, last week we lost David Emge, who is, of course, a flyboy from Dawn of the Dead. As I do anytime, an actor comes across my mind, I check their work. And he didn't do a lot of acting. In fact, he only did like 5 actual films and then a few documentaries and stuff for Dawn of the Dead. So I decided to check one out that I had never seen, and that is 1992's Hellmaster, which I watched over on Tubi. So this one, of course, stars David Emge and also John Saxon, directed by Douglas Schulze. So this is a story of a reporter played by David who figures out that there's a high school professor or high school teacher, I guess. He's a psychology teacher, and he's doing some kind of experiments on students, and he thinks that there's something really wrong there. He's drugging him with something, and he's not quite sure what's going on, but he knows it's nefarious. So he goes to this school to figure out what all that is about. Meanwhile, the students who are being drugged by this professor are starting to kind of come out of their shell. It's almost, honestly, it's disturbing behavior in 1992. If I'm being honest with you guys, except they're more like zombified in this one. They're a little bit more demon-like, and it's the students who are trying to stop their friends from turning into one of that professor's puppets. So that's really the gist of the film, is the students in the high school trying to figure out how to stop this guy with the help of David, the reporter. I couldn't believe how much this was like disturbing behavior when I watched it. But as far as this movie goes, for one, honestly, I never heard of before I looked at his work. It's actually pretty good. It's got a lot of things that I like. It's got some religious horror because it's kind of a religious cult at the same time. It's got great body horror. It's got great practical effects. It's got good kills. It's got some nudity. It's got some like killer creatures, and there's just like a lot to love about this one. I just couldn't believe like how many of the awesome scenes that I was seeing, and I'm like, I've never seen any of this ever, and I don't understand why. I it's not like the best film ever, but it's something I think people should definitely at least check out because there's a lot of good stuff in here. So I give this one a 3.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Not like a classic or anything like that, but one I think that deserves more eyes on it than they should. And of course, rest in peace, David. It was cool to see him. He's actually a lot like Flyboy in this one. I don't know if maybe he's like typecast or that's just his personality in real life. I'm not too sure, but it was cool to see him. And yeah, I look forward to watching the other 3 films he's done, which are a little harder to find, but I'll figure it out.
Excellent. Excellent. That sounds cool. All right. My first one tonight, brand new 2024 release. A movie that hit theaters recently, but already hit streaming the other day, and that is Night Swim, Blumhouse's new movie. My expectations going in were pretty low already based on everyone. Essentially, I haven't really heard too many good things about this movie at all, but I got to do it. I got to check it out for myself and see, if I can maybe am in the minority and actually like this movie. So this movie essentially is about a family that ends up moving into a home with a pool in the backyard. The pool, of course, has been sort of abandoned, not taken care of for a long time. They fix it up. They're having a great time with the pool, blah, blah, blah. And come to find out the pool is haunted and madness ensues from there. They could have just changed the title of this film to Amityville Pool, honestly, because they rip off Amityville Horror so much in this movie, especially when we get to the end finale. It's crazy how much they ripped off Amityville Horror in this movie. But yeah, so I will say, the movie actually did start off fairly well. There's a really interesting backstory with the father character where he was a professional baseball player and he ends up getting injured or gets diagnosed with a rare disease or whatever. And his whole sort of backstory I thought was really interesting, and he had a really interesting sort of arc that comes into it where the pool has sort of these healing capabilities and whatnot, and he sort of becomes obsessed with it and whatnot. But then the movie just after that, it just goes into the complete sort of generic, just dull territory, and it progressively gets worse as it goes along. Is it an awful movie? No. But is it a good movie? No. It's still a bad movie. I will say it's watchable, but there's no reason to watch it, So the haunted pool concept is cool, but it's just so wasted here. There's not a lot of great scares like at all involving the pool. I think probably the best scare you got in the trailer with the whole sort of Marco Polo sort of scene. But other than that, they really don't utilize the pool enough. Instead, they kind of go off the pool and do some really weird shit that just wasn't good. And at the end of the day, yeah, like I said, it's just generic. Like it just becomes an Amityville horror ripoff. Like I said, by the time it gets to the end, so yeah, I mean, it just takes the easy way out. I think some interesting things were explored, but then they're just like, nah, fuck it. Like we'll just go. This isn't the type of movie for that. It's just gonna be basic PG-13 scarefest horror, jump scare horror. But it doesn't even deliver on that. Like the scares aren't good enough. Yeah, so I give it a 2 out of 5. Like I said, I mean, it's well shot. It definitely had a budget and stuff like that. So, it's not the worst thing you're going to watch this year, but it's certainly not worth your time either. So I would definitely say skip it. I mentioned this in my letterbox review. The best haunted house pool thing I've seen so still is that Are You Afraid of the Dark episode where they find the pool in the school, like a hidden pool in the school. I forget what that one's called, but it's a really cool episode if you can find it. It's probably on YouTube these days, but they should develop that into a full-length movie if you're going to do a haunted pool movie, and I'd be more interested in that. So that once again is Night Swim 2024. You can currently watch it streaming for like $20 on Amazon Prime, but do not pay that at all. If you could find it for free, I mean, I still wouldn't watch it. But I mean, as horror fans, I know you're still going to end up watching it. So just make sure you don't pay a lot for it if you are going to watch it.
All right, noted. So my second one this week is continuing my kind of marathon that I've been doing for the last few weeks, and that is Bloodlust Subspecies 3 from 1994 over on Tubi. So this completes the Subspecies trilogy. Now, of course, there's 4 and 5 and a spinoff, but at the time, this was built as a trilogy. And in the first one, it's about, a vampire Radu he finds like these girls who are vacationing nearby, and he tries to kind of bring him in as his brides. The second one, he succeeds to get one of them, but her sister comes to visit, tries to save her as she's turning into a vampire slowly. By the end, she turns into a vampire and saves the sister. In this one, takes place right after the second. She's now fully a vampire, and the sister decides that she wants to save her, like the vampire sister, once and for all. And meanwhile, Radu, the main vampire, is starting to fall in love with his new kind of vampire bride. And that's kind of where the story is. Honestly, at first I was like, I don't know if I'm liking this as much as the other two. The other two were both 3 out of 5s, and this one was kind of like lacking like any really horror. It was a lot more of just complaining and telling her that he loves her and showing her like the ways of the vampire and things like that. But the last like 15-ish minutes really brought it together in a way that I thought was satisfying and honestly should have probably ended the series. And I would give it the same score, 3 out of 5. I think Subspecies 1 through 3 are all kind of just like decent one-time watches, So this one is right there with the other ones. I'm curious where it goes with the spin-off and the other two films. They do leave it open at the end of the third one, so I'm assuming that's where their opening is for number 4, but I'm still curious enough to watch it. And thank you to one of our listeners, Caleb, who let me know that the spin-off is set between 3 and 4, and it actually does come into play in 4. So I was going to watch it at the end of the series, but I'm not going to watch it next week because, now I know where it fits in the timeline. So thank you for that information. And yeah, Subspecies 3 Bloodlust on Tubi.
Yeah, I've never checked out the Subspecies. That's one franchise I've never jumped on the boat for. I know you said they're kind of worth one-time watches. So would you like, knowing me, would you say it's worth the jump on for me to at least jump on maybe the first one?
No, because there's so much more out there.
Right.
Like, to be honest with you, unless you're a big Full Moon fan, maybe.
Yeah.
It's just something that's like I'm happy I'm watching. I do it while I work out. I don't even like it while I'm on the treadmill. It's not like one of those that I'm sitting in my basement on my big screen, like eagerly anticipating. So no, I don't think you should go out of your way to watch it. But if you do end up watching it, it's decent. It's worth at least the watch.
All right, cool. I just realized this is our last January episode, so unfortunately, I did
It's
not.
technically February, so
Is it? Oh, it is, right? Oh, okay,
yeah.
right.
Well, for
So it's
the
our
episode
first
anyway.
February. Yeah, we're recording. We don't record the same day the episode releases, people. Sorry, a few days before. So there's your podcast magic for you. I'm sure most of you already know that by now, though. But I am behind on my month challenge thing. So Steve's recommendation of The Swarm, I will try to get in for next week for that. So hopefully a review for The Swarm coming next week for my monthly challenge.
I'm really curious, like for you on that one, because it's described as the French Ari Aster. So
Yes.
yeah, it's not for everyone. I can tell you that, but I think
Yeah.
you will enjoy it.
Awesome. Look forward to it. All right, so let's get into our interview review here. We have an interview, of course, once again with Sean Roberts at the end of the episode. He plays our main character in this movie, Here for Blood. He plays Tom O'Bannon. So once again, February 9th on Screenbox. So a week from today, it will be releasing on Screenbox. It also said it's going to get a limited theater release, so maybe check your theaters if you do want to watch it in theaters as well. Maybe after listening to our review, just wait to hear what we say. But Here for Blood. So this movie is about a pro wrestler who is sort of, he's in the indie circuit, right? So he's not making a lot of money making doing his wrestling shows. So his girlfriend, she is crunching for exams in college, and she asks her boyfriend, played by Sean Roberts, if he can do a babysitting gig for the night. So he agrees. He goes over, babysits a young girl at a secluded farmhouse type place, and from there, madness ensues. It becomes it starts off as a home invasion movie, and then it goes into some crazy places that I won't spoil for you guys because the spoilers, like I really actually ended up enjoying this movie a lot more than I thought I was going to, honestly. It's definitely low budget. And it started, I think, a little rough around the edges here and there, and I was a little concerned. But man, the more and more you go into this movie, the better and better it gets. It's just like a complete love story for practical effects and gore. Yeah, I don't want to get too spoilery because it just, the places it goes is fucking pretty insane. Like it goes to some crazy ass places that I never expected. The twists and turns in this movie are wild. I just really, really appreciate, the effort and love I could tell that was put into this movie. So I had a hell of a time. Steve, what'd you think of it?
Yeah, I didn't know what to make of this movie at first, especially the screeners. I tend not to look into it too much, so I go in kind of surprised. And you got this big, like, pro wrestler dude, and he goes babysitting, which was a really weird kind of plot point, especially like a 10-year-old. They just leave a 10-year-old with this guy they don't know, weird. But anyway, they don't play it off weird, thankfully. They play it off kind of legit. And then it's a home invasion. I saw it was a home invasion, and I'm like, I'm not a big home invasion guy. I don't know if I'll really be into this. It's going to be just a wrestler home invasion thing. But holy shit, does it take a turn for the interesting. Like Joe said, they mix different subgenres that you wouldn't expect, and there's blood, and there's creatures, and there's all sorts of stuff. I just don't want to say it because it is not out yet at this point. But I think this is one people should check out knowing the least amount of, as possible, because there are a ton of surprises, including, and we mentioned this in the interview, an interesting voice cameo that you might not see coming. I enjoyed this. I think this is the best film I watched in 2024. Now, granted, we're still in January when we're recording this. I haven't seen a ton yet, but yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with this one, and I think it's worth definitely checking out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I will give the caveat of it's a little corny and cheesy at times, but I think I think it's definitely worth your time. Like it really surprised me. I think it's a great one to watch with like a group of friends type sort of midnight movie style. It's just crazy. Yeah. And our interview, Sean Roberts does great as the lead. He's like a complete he's like the badass, right? He's sort of like the John Wick style, character here that just absolutely destroys a lot of people in it, and it's just such a fun movie. So yeah, I think so. Definite recommend from both Steve and I for that. So that once again, that's Here for Blood, and it hits Screenbox on February 9th.
Yeah. And I do have one more that I want to mention. We just had our movie night on last Friday. We do it usually every last Friday of the month. And I want to thank everyone for coming. So we watched 2013's Bad Milo, which is a movie on Tubi. Thank you to Zach for recommending it. I really appreciated the recommendation. Bad Milo is a film about a guy. He's got stomach problems. He's kind of like the budget Jason Bateman, if you ask me. That's kind of what he felt like. He's got other great actors like Gillian Jacobs, Peter Stormare, who I fucking absolutely adore, Patrick Warburton. I mean, classic guy there. You also have Kumail Nanjiani that we talked about, was it last week or a couple weeks ago with Destroy All Neighbors?
Yes, not from Harold and Kumar.
Not from Harold Kumar, that's right. From Silicon Valley, is that what you?
Yes, Silicon Valley, yep.
Yeah. So this guy has stomach problems. He's not quite sure what's going on. He's going to the bathroom a lot, and his wife seems to be a little bit fed up with it because it's a constant issue. And he's also having kind of marital problems because he's not ready for a baby, but his wife is, and his mother is like kind of pushing it, and his mother is with Kumail, and he's much younger than her, and they have a weird relationship as well. It's very sexual in nature that they keep bringing up inappropriately at the table. And yeah, so the story is he, with those stomach issues, eventually a little creature that kind of looks like the baby from Dinosaur, not the mama baby, comes out and kills people that this guy doesn't like. And once he's done killing that person, he crawls back up his ass and goes on his merry way. And it's the story of him trying to control the demon in his ass, which kind of reminds me of similar things we've seen in the past. There's that one where it's his ass that does the killing. We watched it also in a movie club one time. I think I made you watch it as a punishment, maybe. I don't remember what it's called though. Anyway, whatever that one was called. There's also X-Files episode that was kind of like that. It wasn't up his butt though. It was like a conjoined twin that he had on his stomach that the conjoined twin would detach and go kill people and then come back. It's a wild film. There's no doubt about it. Very good comedy. I really thought the comedy hit mostly. My issue with it is that they don't go far enough with the horror. There's a whole lot of scenes of him complaining, a lot of scenes of that thing going up and in and out of his ass, like an uncomfortable amount of scenes doing that. Peter Stormare plays like his guru, and he helps him through the process, which is hilarious. But there's so much of it that I just wanted more killings, more blood, more victims and stuff like that. So I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5. I think it's worth watching, especially in a group setting like we were, but not one I would go out of my way of checking out either. So that's Bad Milo over on Tubi.
Excellent. We didn't mention our ratings for Here for Blood. I don't know if you want to.
Sure. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5.
Yeah, when I ended it, I was at a 3 out of 5, but the more I get away from it, the more I enjoyed it. The more it sticks in my brain as being just really, really fun. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5 as well. So all right. So once again, yeah, check that out. Stick around for the interview. But before that, it's time for our main event of the evening. 1998's Disturbing Behavior. The new kid in Cradle Bay, Washington, stumbles across something sinister about the town's method of transforming its unruly teens into upstanding citizens. Steve, this was your pick. So would you like to get a little more in-depth about the sort of plot? And then I'll share my thoughts.
Yeah, so this was semi my pick. My actual pick is going to be next week. This was Todd's not there, so I sent Joe 5 movies, and I'm like, pick one of these, and he picked this one. So Disturbing Behavior is a movie that I used to watch a lot growing up. I had the soundtrack on CD, and it's got some banger songs, but I haven't watched it in probably 15 to 20 years, and I didn't know how it would hold up, and I was curious. And seeing all the scores on Letterboxd, I was not too confident. But the story is about a guy played by James Marsden, of course, the second most famous Marsden after Jason. He goes to this town with Catherine Isabelle, who plays his sister, and they're new to the town. His brother committed suicide, unfortunately, so they're kind of like an unease within the family, and he's going to school, and new kid in school, he doesn't know who to hang out with, so he finds this other kid called Gavin and his really weird friend called UV, and he kind of gives them a lay of the land, explaining the politics in the school, what type of groups each people have, and he informs him that there's this particular group called the Blue Ribbons, who are kind of this jock kind of preppy group that exclusively hang out with each other and are kind of mean to others, and they're really weird. And he's telling him that these people, there's something weird with them because they were all kind of very different and all of a sudden switched to Blue Ribbons as soon as they joined the program. And eventually Gavin himself becomes a Blue Ribbon, which makes, was Steve, which is James Marsden's character, try to figure out what's going on. He also meets a woman played by Katie Holmes who kind of helps him on his way. And that's kind of the gist of the story, is what is happening with this Blue Ribbon group, why are they so violent, what's triggering them, and getting behind kind of where it all started and who is responsible for all of it. So Joe, I have nostalgia for this film, so I might be going in a different way than you are. Had you seen this movie, and what were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I do have nostalgia for this movie, which is one of the reasons why when it was one of the options that I chose it. I remember watching this movie, oh God, it must have been like middle school, I guess, when it first came out. So I do remember watching it a lot in my youth, but I probably haven't watched it in a solid 15 plus years. And honestly, it just kind of, I forgot about it. So it was a pretty fresh one. Like there were a couple of scenes, I kind of remember from it. I totally forgot James Marsden was the lead in it. I just remembered, honestly, Katie Holmes being in it. But other than that, I didn't remember too much. So this was, for the most part, a pretty fresh watch. Once I started watching it again, I did start to remember places it went. So yeah, I gotta say, it didn't hold up very well for me, honestly. I still like enjoy. I still think it's like a decent enough movie. The problem is that like it's just like every single other sort of '90s like teen horror movie, which isn't like the worst thing in the world. The problem is like a lot of the other ones did something better or different, whereas this one just kind of plays it like just by the numbers, and it's just like pretty generic. There's just like not a lot of meat really on the bone here. Like it's just kind of starts, middle, ends with just not enough there for me to grab on to anything and get excited about, unfortunately. I think one of the biggest problems, honestly, is James Marsden himself. Like like his character, like I feel like he already should be a part of the teens that sort of, he has that look already to him of the I forget what they're called in the
Blue
movie.
Ribbons?
The Blue Ribbons, yeah. He already looks like a blue ribbon, and he's supposed to be sort of this loner, sort of ragtag type guy, but he doesn't give off those vibes at all. And I get why the studio chose him, because he's a good looking dude, right? So like he's sort of supposed to be the teen heartthrob of the movie, but I think it was just like a miscasting choice for me. I mean, I think he does a good job, like his performance is good, but I just did not buy him as sort of being the sort of the loner character, which the other two guys played by, Nick Stahl and I don't know the other dude. I just call him sort of albino guy in this movie. They both, played it better for sure. And I just didn't buy that he was sort of supposed to be like friends with them and whatnot, and Katie Holmes' character as well. So to me, like that kind of threw me off a bit. And yeah, I mean, I like there just wasn't enough like kills either. You got like the intro's pretty cool, like I thought. And I know we'll get more in depth later. You get a pretty cool intro, and then you get some character development, which is always important, but then like there's just long stretches where not a lot of interesting stuff happens. I do think they did a pretty good job of like masking what was happening in the town for a long time to keep sort of the mystery there. But once we get to like what's actually happening here, it's cool. It's interesting enough, but it just didn't. They didn't really do enough with it, I think, to keep me interested. So at the end of the day, like it just came off just generic to me.
Yeah. Where to start with this one? So I disagree with you on one aspect. I think it was the point to have someone who looks like a Blue Ribbon as the lead because you would expect him to join that group. But it shows that it doesn't mean you look like that you necessarily belong to that group, you know? And I like that he didn't look like Gavin or UV or, kind of that type of person because it kind of subverts expectations. Like this guy should be the jock, but he's not, he can belong with another group. So I like that. But I do unfortunately agree with you that it is kind of a bland film. There's not a whole lot going on. Amazing 90s music and very much so 98. I was late high school in 98. So I very much relate with what's going on in the high school of this film, particularly with the type of groups that the school has, because a lot of those groups were around when I was in high school. So I think that helped a lot with the nostalgia and everything like that. It's just, you're right, there's not enough kills. There are long periods of time where there's not much going on. It's just people having conversations that don't really lead anywhere. But upon this rewatch, there are some things that I didn't remember that I found super interesting. And one thing in particular that I'm really dying to discuss with you is one of my favorite actors who I think is extremely underrated is William Sadler. And he plays a janitor in this one. And I think there's a great story behind this dude. They just don't really explore it enough. So I'm just going to skip ahead to him and then we'll go back into some of the like actual high school and Blue Ribbon stuff. So in the movie, he plays this kind of weird, dirty janitor who's like chasing rats all the time and he's obsessed with rats and he keeps coming out of sewers and like gross places and stuff and he bangs on machines and he's got a cigarette like always hanging in his mouth and you're meant to believe he's kind of like the town, like the village idiot. But Steve, the main character, notices that he has a Kurt Vonnegut book in his back pocket. And he's like, there's no way this guy would read that. And it turns out that he's playing an act. And he says, wouldn't it be great to just disappear and not be yourself? So what was he? Like where I would love to know. Like I'm afraid, maybe he's got like a really shady past that isn't good and shouldn't be working at a school, but maybe also I was hoping he'd have some kind of connection with the Blue Ribbons, like he just wanted to disappear within his own town. I don't know what to deal with him. What'd you make of that character?
Yeah, I mean, I love William Sadler. He's a great actor. He's an excellent character actor. He's definitely like he reminds me a lot of what's his name? Was it Will Patton?
Yeah.
And a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I feel like the two of them, like together, they're just two of the most probably underrated actors working in Hollywood. They're always popping up in fantastic movies and always give great roles. I mean, he was fine in this. Like he didn't, he was there sort of, I guess, for a plot devices, I guess at the end of the day. He's sort of the guy that takes out the Blue Ribbons, which, oh my God, we'll get into that scene like at the end. But man, spoilers, I did not really enjoy that scene all that much. But yeah, I mean, he was there. Like, they didn't really. This is another movie like we talked about it last week with Event Horizon. This movie was heavily edited by the studio. There was once again like big studio interference with this movie. There is a director's cut that has never seen the light of day, apparently, but there's about a 2-hour director's cut, which I don't know if I'd want to watch that, honestly, but I would be interested to see what was cut out. So maybe more of William Sadler's janitor backstory is in there. But honestly, for me, like I just didn't find him interesting enough for me to even really care about his backstory. So yeah, I mean, for me, he was fine. Like he's a good actor and I liked seeing him here, but not anyone I was too interested in exploring too in depth personally.
Yeah, see, the thing is, I wonder because I did read about that whole cut, and you can watch the majority of the director's cut on YouTube because throughout all the editions, like the DVD releases and stuff like that, they had a bunch of deleted scenes, and someone cut them all back into the film and released on YouTube. So if you want to watch that, you can. And I think this character has to have scenes because there's no story purpose as him faking being the village idiot. and there's got to be a story behind it. Like, why is he doing it? Why does it serve? Why was it important to the story that he does that? Because really, he could have just been a nice, weird guy, but he isn't. And that's a kind of it's both a miss, but also made me really interested to know, like, what was the deal with that character?
Perhaps life after Shawshank.
Maybe.
Redemption.
Yeah.
Yes, when he
That's
gets out
possible.
of
Very,
prison.
very possible, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very, very possible. So let's go back to the blue ribbon and the stuff that's going on in school. So we're introduced to Gavin and UV early on in the film. And one scene that I thought was really interesting is him sitting at the cafeteria and going through each of the different groups within the school. So I want to ask you just a couple, I guess, more personal questions. One, and I asked this on Discord, so that's one of the reasons I joined the Discord. We had a big discussion about it today. What kind of groups did your school have? Was it like segregated like that by music type, by maybe like whatever the case may be? What would you belong back then, and what do you belong in? What would you belong in now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did enjoy that scene. It's like very cliche, obviously, like with every single sort of high school teenage movie like this. You get into the high school and you find all the cliques and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, I think every high school is like that. I think every high school has those cliques. You have the jocks, you have the geeks, you have the the burnouts and stuff like that. And the list goes on and on. So I did enjoy that scene with the three of them. I thought that was entertaining enough. As far as what I belong to, I didn't really belong to a particular clique in high school. I kind of talked to everybody. I would talk to the geeks, I would talk to the jocks, I would talk to like the skater kids, the burnout, stuff like that. I definitely wasn't like popular though or anything like that, but I wasn't like a complete outcast either. So to me, I feel like I just kind of sat in the middle like of everything. You know what I mean? I didn't jump to one or the other. So yeah. What about you? What about
And
you? Where were you at?
if I just want to ask one more before
Yeah.
I go, if you had to choose a group, like
Oh, that's right,
it's like
today.
it's like Grand Theft Auto. You have
Yeah.
to join one of the gangs. Which one do you think from the ones you had in high school would you belong most now?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. I don't know. I'm just never like the click people. Like I mean, if like you could find if there was like a great like if there was a horror crew back then or something like
Which there isn't
which there
usually.
wasn't,
Yeah.
there isn't, and there usually is, it never is. So I guess if there was like a horror geek, I mean, I would definitely jump on like the horror geek train. But yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know. Like I'm just not a person that just jumps on the clicks. Like I guess I would gear more towards sort of the yeah, I guess like the goth style kids since they're more into sort of the darker horror stuff or whatever. Although I was never really a goth, but I guess I would head more towards that territory like in today because I'm not like athletic or anything, so I definitely wouldn't be with the jocks. Although I do like sports, but I wouldn't fit in with them. I'm not a person that does many drugs or anything, so I wouldn't join the burnout crowd. I'm not athletic enough to skate, so I wouldn't join the skater crowd. So yeah, I guess I'd be more towards the sort the. I still feel like I'd fall down the middle today, but if I had to choose one, I guess it'd be sort of the goth style chill kids.
Yeah. So I went to an interesting high school because I went to French school in an English neighborhood, and there are a lot of politics involved with that, which I'm not going to go into because it's a whole conversation. But the gist of it is where I'm from, if immigrated to my province, automatically had to go to this school because you have to go to French school by law over there. It's like a law. So what we ended up having is a lot of different races, and my school was segregated by race. You had the white people who were all French. You had the black people, you had the Arabs, you had the Asians, you had, like that's how we were segregated, the South Americans. And it was the weirdest thing. So we didn't have so much skaters and goth and, that kind of stuff. I was kind of lucky because I was accepted by the white French kids because I was white, but I was accepted by the kind of other groups as well because I was an Anglophone. So I was kind of like in the middle. So I kind of just squeezed by, the whole high school thing. I personally was a jock in high school, almost in a sick way because I even listened to jock jams in my car. Like, I was, not the coolest kid, but anyway. And I was also the captain of the only sports team I had in the school, which sounds like a cool thing when I say it like that. But in truth be told, it was a volleyball team because that's all we had. And we had no budget because it was a piece of shit school. So we actually had to wear the the women's basketball jerseys from the 1980s. That's the only thing we had as any kind of uniform. So it was, yeah, I fucking hated high school. I love college, but high school is awful. As for what group I would belong to, like you, probably goth. We only had one goth person or two goth people in my high school, and they were a little too weird for my taste. Like the goth girl carried around like a baby doll that was burnt. It was odd. Like I don't know. But I guess if I'm gonna pick a group, that's probably now the one I would. At least we could talk horror. I'd be weirded out, but we could talk horror.
Yeah, same. There was like some similar things. I remember there was like a goth kid in high school that kind of had a similar thing carrying around like dolls and stuff like that. Yeah. I don't know. Hey, whatever. Whatever you're into, I guess.
To teach their own.
Right.
So how did you feel about Gavin and UV as characters in the story? Were you surprised that Gavin was the one that kind of the main characters joined the Blue Ribbons, or like how did you feel about all that?
No, I mean, I thought like he was a good choice, right? Because he's sort of the likable one, like the one of the group and stuff like that, the one you don't want to see turn. I really liked UV, but I just feel like he's like really underutilized. He like disappears for like a solid like 45 minutes of this movie and then just sort of pops back up behind a tree at one point. I wish
Did we
got
talk
a little...
about that? What was he
Yeah.
doing there? Why was he at Steve's
No.
house, like behind the tree outside?
He was, he was
He's
just
creeping on Catherine
scheming.
Isabel.
He was scheming that whole time. That was 45 minutes, I guess. He didn't have Nick Stahl as a sidekick anymore. So
Right.
he was lost. But yeah, I mean, Nick Stahl's a great actor, so he does a good job. I mean, that I did enjoy that scene of sort of when we finally he becomes a blue ribbon. And he pops up and it turns into sort of this whole fight scene, James Marsden, where he sort of turns on James Marsden and knees him in the nuts, I believe it is at one point. But yeah, I mean, that's the most action we get in the whole movie, sort of. Yeah, I mean, I just wish we got like more, like that whole opening scene where, they're messing around and he like breaks her neck, and we find out that the town's sort of in on it. I thought was great. And I wish we got more of the blue ribbons raging in this movie. And we just don't. Like, so yeah, it's just I like Nick Stahl. I thought that scene was great, but we should have got more with either him or the other blue ribbons kind of going apeshit. Like we didn't get enough of that until towards the end.
Yeah, I did like his turn as well. I love the scene where they kind of crash the PTA meeting by like observing what's going on up there. And they're like, our next student that's joining the program is a loser. He spends too much time listening to rock and masturbating. And James looks at him and says, Jesus, what a what a loser. And they're actually talking about Gavin. And, yeah, I thought that was a funny scene. And yeah, I agree, though, that the blue ribbon there should have been more to them. We do have that one blue ribbon who kind of pops up because he's horny for Katie Holmes's character. Actually, I don't know if we mentioned it, but horniness is a trigger for the blue ribbons that makes them go psychotic. And you have a couple scenes, especially with that guy. You have one in a grocery store, you have one at a gas station, like you see him a few times kind of go off. And you also have a girl exhibit horniness on James Marsden's character Steve, and she like just takes off her top and like also goes in a weird way. So there's like a little bit of it, but definitely not enough they didn't feel scary enough, I guess is what I'm getting to. They hang out at a yogurt shop or a shoppy, as Gavin says, and they just kind of stick to themselves until being assaulted, right?
Yeah. I mean, that is like the one I think scene I remember, which is probably the most iconic scene, right, in the movie where the girl kind of, tries to, seduce James Marsden and then ends up smashing her head on the mirror, which was cool. Yeah, I mean, I wish we got more of that. Like you said, I guess I want to get into the twist, I guess, is what we finally find out. What is happening to these kids. What we come to find out is that there's a doctor in town that has convinced the parents, hey, like, I have invented this sort of chip that we can insert into your kids that, your kids that are going the wrong way in life, right? Like that parents might be concerned about, and we can insert these chips into your kids and they'll turn into the perfect model student like the rest of that we see in these blue ribbons. The problem is, obviously, if they get horny or whatever, it sends off a sort of rage thing. I mean, I don't know. It just reminded me of like a a Twilight Zone style children was Village of the Damned style twist of
Yeah.
I mean it's just yeah, I mean, I don't know. I, I don't know where else you could have gone with this, I guess. But just like that's when it started sort of turning into generic territory to me, where they end up like in the fucking laboratory and James Marsden's like tied up and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. It just was
Yeah.
like a blah sort of twist for me.
Right. So first piece of advice to the doctor: lose the goddamn mustache. It was awful. It was like a half mustache where he shaved like right under his nose, so the mustache was like really small just above his lip. No, just don't. Just commit to the whole mustache or fucking put or no mustache. But I agree with you. I did like when they go like there's a facility of the people where the testing didn't work, including the doctor's daughter. I thought that was an interesting scene. They're there for 3 minutes, I think, and then leave. Now it has probably the best song in the movie, "Flagpole Stood Up" by Harvey Danger, which is awesome. But there just wasn't enough there. And where I think it should have gone, if I had written this film, is that it should have essentially become a fast zombies film. At one point, something should have just triggered them all, whether it's that radio or whatever, and they start attacking people, and it becomes kind of a survival film where they're trying to kill the remaining Blue Ribbons because they've gone mad. And they don't do that at all. The Blue Ribbons are just kind of there for the majority of the film, just standing around and really wanting to recruit James Marsden and Katie Holmes for whatever fucking reason I don't really understand.
Yes. And Catherine Isabel, which
Oh,
yeah, I
Catherine
mean,
Isabel, yeah.
she's
Which
kind of
I
like
get. Yeah.
she's kind of wasted in this movie.
Yeah, you don't
like,
see her much.
Yeah, you don't see her much. Also, there's like a really random plot point with the brother that committed suicide that really goes nowhere. It's just sort of mentioned and glossed over.
So I know for a fact that's one of the heavy storylines that
Okay.
was cut from the film
That makes
because they,
sense.
they felt since it dealt with suicide that it was a little too intense for a movie they were trying to market to like teens essentially.
Right.
Yeah, because they even hired with Ethan Embry, I think, is the brother.
Oh,
So kind of a waste because you see him really quickly
right.
in flashbacks.
That's right. You see him for like 2 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, they'd hired a legit actor to play that role
Yeah.
because there was more to it.
Right. See, that's like a hard disagree with me is that they like thought it was too serious for teen because like teen suicide is like such a like big thing like in this country or in the world. Not, I mean, obviously. So I don't think that would have been like too heavy. You know, it's an important subject, but I guess back in the 90s it was a little more taboo maybe or something. They didn't want to touch on it. So, I mean, what did you think of the whole fucking rat sensor thing sort of setting them all off? And that's sort of the way they end up getting defeated.
I mean, it's dumb, obviously,
Yeah.
but I guess sound waves have been used to kill some things in the past. So, I mean, it's as good reason. I can't think of a different, like another reason that would trigger them, So at least they gave the janitor something to do.
Right.
I don't know
I
where he
mean,
found all those machines. That's a whole other in like one night, but that's a whole other thing.
right. Yeah. He was busy. He was a busy man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I really dislike that scene. You know, all of the sort of people raging from to shut off the signals, and then he drives off the cliff with all of them to defeat them. I mean, would they have been that dumb to just stay on the car when he's clearly driving off it? I'm like, I feel like a lot of them probably would have jumped off, but I don't know. I guess like that signal and the rage
Right.
caused them to not do it. Plus the fucking corny ass fucking line of "Hey teacher, leave those kids alone" or whatever. He pulls out the Pink Floyd fucking thing at the end while he's
Right.
driving off the cliff. I was like, oh, give me a break. Yeah, I did not dig that scene at all. But one of my laugh out loud favorite scenes is when fucking Marsden is escaping at the end and he fucking does a fucking Evil Knievel style jump onto the ferry boat. I lost my shit. I was like that. I just found it absolutely hilarious. That it was great.
Yeah, but not in a good way like this.
No,
because
no,
it's so
It
ridiculous.
was ridiculous. Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah. There are a lot of moments in this that just, it's just like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you think like I don't know. I don't think personally, like even with the director's cut, this would have made it a much better movie. Personally, like I don't think my rating would have gone up that much. Like in comparison to last week, Event Horizon, I'm saying like that director's cut might have raised this movie up to almost horror sci-fi masterpiece. But with this, I'm just like, I feel like it still would have been like a middling type movie.
Maybe, right? Because if they cut out all the horror stuff, then maybe it would have been better, because as horror fans, maybe it would have been more entertained. Or if I think they cut out a lot of kills, I think they cut out a lot of the suicide subplot. I think maybe it would have been a better film, if they had added all that stuff. But I don't know, because it is kind of a very like mid film. There's not a whole lot that's unique in this film. Like I said, I watched Hellmaster, which was released 6 years before this, and it was basically the same film, just done better, with more horror and more things like that. So yeah, I don't know how much it would impact, but it depends what they cut. If they cut some random exposition scenes, then no. If it's really they just cut all the good stuff, which would be weird, but then maybe. But it's tough to say. This is the movie we got, so we got to review it off what was released.
Right. So apparently in the director's cut, there was a sex scene between Steve and Rachel. So there you go, a little heat,
Probably
little
would have
heat
been
there.
PG though.
Yeah. There's also an ending in which Gavin dies,
Right.
which he clearly does not in this movie. Yeah, I mean, what'd you think about that? Obviously, they left it open, right? At the end, we end up seeing Gavin. He has gone to a new school, and he apparently, but the doctor's dead, right? So it's like, what is he gonna do? Like, is he gonna develop the technology again, or is he able to being able to? He is still a blue ribbon. Is he able to convert these kids some way somehow? Obviously, they kind of left it open for a sequel, but obviously, I don't think anyone cared. Like, I don't know how well this movie did, but apparently not well enough to come up with a sequel for
it. Right? Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know if I like that ending. They should have just left him dead, honestly, or leave it open, like don't show him die, like they didn't. They just kind of show the car going over with all the students. But if he's alive, are there others alive? I don't know. It's like they didn't know how to end it. I don't know how the original ending was supposed to be. I know he dies, but I don't know if like what would have been the last shot. Maybe it's just them, sailing away to the next town. I have no idea, but yeah, it's because I didn't care about that point. I was kind of indifferent whether he lived or died.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, like reading this director's cut, like stuff that was cut out, it just seemed like more exposition and really not any horror stuff.
Right.
So I don't foresee this being a much better movie even with the director's cut. But
actually, it could have been worse, because
right.
It was an hour 24, right? So
yeah,
that was a perfect length for this movie.
Right. I mean, according to apparently it was screened to Fangoria writers and other horror journalists, and they said it was leaps and bounds apparently better than the theatrical cut. They praised it a lot more, so maybe it would have been a better movie, but I don't know. After reading some of the stuff, I don't think so. But all right, I think that about covers it, Steve. So why don't you start us off? Why don't you give us a rating?
Yeah, I was going into this expecting a 4 out of 5 because of my memory. Unfortunately, I'm not near that upon rewatch. I don't think it was like, I still enjoyed watching it. It didn't do anything great. So I'm leaving it right in the middle, 2.5 out of 5. It's too bad. I'm kind of sad, but that happens. Nostalgia is a powerful drug, and some things are better left in the past. And I think, unfortunately, this movie is one of them.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I also give it a 2.5 out of 5, and I honestly think nostalgia plays a factor in my rating. I feel like if I just watch this fresh now, I might have rated it even lower.
Right.
but I think the nostalgia plays a bit of a factor for me. I mean, it's an enjoyable enough movie. It's a 90s teen horror movie. It's not as good clearly as like The Faculty, which came, I think the same year or later on and stuff like that. So there's just so many better 90s teen horror movies out there that sort of like, why waste your time with this one? It's just like not
right,
good enough in any way. So, I mean, it's watchable, absolutely, but just nothing that's, I can recommend. So yeah, 2.5 out of 5 for me as well.
One last question I have, kind of related, but also unrelated. And I'm just curious, when people are named Joe in a movie and they repeat the name a lot,
Yes.
Do you feel a certain way about it? Because so in this one, the main guy's called Steve or Steven, and they say it a lot in this movie, like
They do
unnaturally amount of times. In fact, he even says a line where I fucking hate being called Steven. Call me Steve, right? And I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't love being called Steven. That's kind of like the name my mom would call me when she was mad at me. You know, even though at work they kind of call me Steven all the time anyway, but it's a whole other story. I just felt weird in this weird because I don't know, I felt like attacked in some weird way. Do you feel the same way when people are called Joe?
Nah, not really. I just feel like Joe's such a common name. You hear it so often. So maybe the first time I hear it in a movie, I'll be like, oh, cool. It's got the same name as me. But other than that, nah, it doesn't really affect me.
Yeah, it normally doesn't, but they say it so fucking much in this movie
They
that
do.
it was like almost weird
Yeah.
after a while. I don't know. Yeah, I was just curious.
Nah. All right. Well, Steven,
Yeah,
I think that is going to wrap up this episode. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, stick around for our interview with Sean Roberts before we get into before I end our little spiel here. So what that is going to wrap up this episode. We hope you enjoyed our review of Disturbing Behavior. You can keep up with the podcast, Facebook, Twitter. I keep saying Twitter. Do we call it X nowadays? I guess
I don't
Facebook.
care.
Right. I don't care either. I'm like, do I sound like an old man though by saying Twitter every week? Where like
the Twitter.
right, the Twitter, and everyone's
Yeah.
like, what the fuck is Twitter now? I think everyone still calls it Twitter. So Facebook, Twitter/X, Instagram, Threads. Are people even using Threads? Like I hardly am ever on
No.
that thing. The only time I'm ever on it is to post Horror Squad stuff, and I don't even know if anyone's
I think
on
I'm the only one who reacts to them. So.
right, yeah. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the two of you that are maybe on Threads, you can follow us on there as well. But of course, as you know, the absolute best way to keep up with the podcast is our Discord. Amazing community over there. We do movie club every month over there. Steve hosts it. It's an amazing time. Tons of channels. You can keep, like I said, Living Dead Weekend talk over there, Texas Frightmare talk, all the other cons and stuff people are going to. Keep up with the community over there on the Discord. It's linked on our Instagram, or you can send us a DM or email us, the Horror Squad Podcast at gmail.com. We'll send you a link over to the Discord, or just email us if you like. You can email us questions, feedback. If you have maybe a project coming up you'd like to promote or something like that, we're into it. So send us an email if you're doing any of that, the Horror Squad Podcast at gmail.com, and we'll definitely answer you. Merch, tpublic.com, the Horror Squad Podcast. We have a lot of awesome designs over there. If you'd also like to support the podcast, you can leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. That helps us a lot, helps get the name out there, spread the word. So please do that. And once again, important dates, June 7th through the 9th, Living Dead Weekend, Monroeville, Pennsylvania, and October 11th through the 13th, our Hocus Pocus event in Salem, Massachusetts. All details over on the Discord for that. And yeah, that's it. Once again, our interview with Sean Roberts coming up immediately after this. Here for Blood, releasing next week, a week from today, February 9th. So go and check it out, streaming on Screambox. Enjoy the interview. See you next week.
Bye. Welcome back, everyone, to the Horror Squad Podcast, where tonight we have a very special guest. We have the star of the upcoming film, Here for Blood, which is coming out on February 9th in select theaters, on digital, and of course on Screambox, Sean Roberts. Sean, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Can you please tell us a little bit of what Here for Blood is all about?
So the story centers around a quaint little house in the middle of nowhere and a little girl who needs a babysitter. I play the role of Tom, who ends up being given the responsibility of babysitting, much to his resistance to it, only to discover that there is a satanic cult hell-bent on sacrificing said little girl to bring spirits in from the other side. Well, they didn't expect the babysitter, and that was me. So there we are.
My first question is, I mean, I gotta say you looked absolutely jacked for this role, especially as a playing a wrestler. I guess you should, but did you have to bulk up at all for the role, or are you just naturally a gifted man?
Well, I mean, it takes time, it takes energy, and luckily I've had lots of time over the last few years. I've struggled for years wanting to maintain a physique that my agents and representatives wish that I hadn't. But I explained to them that I didn't want to play a heroin addict, so I'm not going to do that. And yeah, man, I mean, it's my own personal passion, and it's the one thing in this world that I can control. So I sort of got into it, and for the longest time, I had that resistance from my team, but I told them, I said, "Listen, this is what it is, and so be it." And I actually got some action roles, and then this came along, which validated it. So yeah, man, it's nice to finally be able to use it and not have it covered up and sort of shied away from. I'm like, man, I work so freaking hard. Are you kidding me? So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to use it.
Now, obviously you played. We got to see some of your wrestling moves in the beginning of the movie, as well as I assume you did. Did you do your own stunts for all of this?
I did, which was a blessing because, a lot of times when you're the lead actor in a movie, that's not something we're willing to take a liability on. But, we kept the majority of the stunt and action safe and not ridiculous. I think originally there was sort of a stair fall that had me going back ass over tea kettle, and that was sort of I was hesitant about doing because that's one of the more dangerous stunts is this backward stairs. But we managed to figure out something else because our location didn't allow that to happen. And I mean, you wear thin pads and you just the best, man. I mean, you're wrestling with a bunch of other dudes and you feel like you're 10 years old in the basement again, and it was really fun. We had a good group to do it with.
Awesome. Now, this movie is to me it was a treat. It was a real treat. It goes to some real crazy places. I never fully expected the twists and turns of this movie. It just gets really insane, but in the best possible ways. So I got to ask you, when you first got the script for this movie, what was your initial reaction?
I felt like it was written for me, man. I mean, these are the words that I would say, and then when you get to the one-liners, just like, oh man, I've been waiting my entire career for one-liners. This is awesome. It's like from the movies in the 90s when you grow up and you see action stars doing it. You hope that maybe one day you find a script that works for you. And James did a heck of a job on this one. Basically, everything you see in the movie, it was his idea. He wrote it down, and it was super easy. It felt like I had already done it, kind of a thing. So by the time I got to the end of the script, I was like, well, yes, where do I sign? Yes, please. I like, movies like this, you like, man, if I had all my expenses paid, I would do this for free. Yes, please. I would pay to do this movie, right? So it was, it was perfect right from the get-go. And I just hope that it turned out to be the movie it did. And we got lucky because it did, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. I can't wait for the horror fans to come out and see this because I know everyone's going to be really jazzed about it. Where the movie really shines and this is where the horror fans really love it is its practical effects and gore in this movie. Were there any particular scenes in general that you had a favorite to film, or anything you're excited for the fans to see without getting too spoilery, of course?
Right. I think there's more than just one awesome little beat where you're just like, oh, that was really cool. So to have anything that stands out in my mind immediately right now, I enjoyed probably when the other actors and actresses get sprayed with blood and I don't have to get all cold and sticky. That's probably my favorite day. And you see the camera guys with garbage bags head to toe, so the splatter. It was it's such a difference, man, to do real gags versus CGI. So it's a novelty even for those of us in film on set because we all want to see how it goes. Does it work? Is it like, and we had a really good team. Our special effects team was the first ones there and the last ones to leave. And they really made this movie something special, I think.
Something that I didn't expect from this movie that I really enjoyed is the relationship that your character has with some of the others, particularly Grace, which I thought was a really kind of sweet relationship the two of you had. Can you describe kind of what it was like working on set with the other actors, especially with the little girl who played Grace?
Normally, when film starts off with a cast read through, we all go to some Motel 8 in their boardroom and sit and have a read. We didn't get an opportunity to do that. Instead, because of COVID, and we all had to do this over FaceTime. And so that's challenging, but it was still sort of nice to hear the script out loud. And one of the things that I sort of acknowledged right from the beginning was the preparedness of all the other actors. I mean, in theory, sure, it's my movie. I got to carry it, but I was impressed from day one of everyone else knowing their roles. And it's one thing just to have a job, but to have a gig that you are passionate about, and it's not the money, because it certainly wasn't the money for anyone on this one. It was being able to do a cool movie like this that got everybody on board and willing to work nights in a shitty fucking location out in the middle of nowhere, and say goodbye to their families for a month and all the things. And one of the things that stood out for me right from the get-go with Maya particularly was how professional she was, right? So to have a 10-year-old kid rocking it like that, we got lucky, because that is one of the things you're warned about in film is working with children and animals. You want to avoid that by all regards, because it really extends the day and is a challenge. And having worked with animals, yes, that is challenging, because it's all about the dog, and forget about the acting that goes around it. But with a little kid like that, she's got so many great little beats that is just like, oh my goodness, it really made it easy working with her. And yeah, our chemistry is 100% natural. She's that good. So I was just in a state of awe for the other actors that were in there, because I mean, I feel like they should all be more successful than they are, because they're all pretty great. So yeah, man, I got lucky, because obviously the better they are, the better I am, and the better the movie is. And it's a pretty good movie, I think.
Definitely. Now, one question I do have is, we get a surprise. I don't want to spoil anything for the fans here, but we do get a surprise cameo from Dee Snider. I won't say what, but I want to know, did you know he was going to be in this movie, or was that sort of an all post-production surprise for you?
It was a post-production surprise. It was a nice little, really? Like, twisted, really? Oh my God, okay, sweet, man. This is unexpected. And I think it brings an extra little bit of value to the project. Like, because he's got a pretty solid fan base for his years of doing this. And, it was, I guess it's validating to have somebody of that caliber be like, I want to be a part of something like that. And yeah, man, I think he killed it. And we got lucky with the soundtrack in this movie for sure. Like, it would have been a completely different movie. So it's a blessing to have him on board for sure.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I can't wait. I really can't wait for the people to check this out, because everyone's going to be just pumped about all of this. So this, just a couple more for you. The movie does leave the door open for a potential sequel. So I got to ask, have you had any discussions, or can you tease anything for a potential sequel?
We listen. The final scene that we filmed, as the sun's coming up and there's panic, because those magic hour only lasts for about 15 minutes, so we got to get this shot. And while we're all sitting there in the car thinking, man, this has been a crazy month together, like, can we do this again? Well, yeah, let's do it again. Okay, what would the story be? Okay, where are we gonna go? I don't know. We're gonna go on vacation. We're gonna take her away from this hellhole. We don't have to worry about the courts and all the things and the real life logistics. We'll just go somewhere else with us. And sure, we talked about it. The frustrating part now is Maya used to be a little kid. She's now a teenager. So it doesn't play the same way. We'd have to figure out something else. But yeah, man, it's different, because when you work so intensely with people like that and it works and everybody gets along, you're like, well, can we do this again? I want to keep playing. This is amazing. So I know that, as actors being unemployed, yeah, absolutely, we want to do this again. Does James have a script written? I don't know. That's a good question. We should ask him or get him working on it, please. But let's get this one in front of audiences and let's see how they respond, man. You know, fingers crossed.
Definitely.
Absolutely. I have to ask you about two other roles you've played in the horror genre. The first one is you worked in a couple of the Dead films under Romero. Can you tell us what it was like working under the master George A. Romero, and maybe a story of what it was like?
Working with George, it's a lot of responsibility, or at least it felt that way initially because of who he is. But there was absolutely no time on set with him that ever felt stressful or uncomfortable or uncertain. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things for directors to be able to do, is create that safe space for actors to go for it, man. I'm not going to make you look silly. Fucking, you want to try something? Go try something. Sure. Absolutely. And he took really good care of his actors. I feel honored to have been a part of that. And he was always supportive. I had the opportunity to go and do some autograph signings with him and see him interact with fans. And for his age, I don't want to be an ageist, but you know, an older guy, to sit there for like 10 hours at a table, engaging with people, giving them everything he has, the photos, the up and down, the answers to the questions. It really, I think it's important for young actors to see somebody established like that and how they handle it. He certainly taught me a lot, you know.
And my last question about another role you had as a big gamer, I have to ask, what was it like to play Albert Wesker in multiple Resident Evil films?
Well, I mean, what was it like? I couldn't even fit into the suit myself. I had to get dressed by other people, like two other people. I couldn't pull the boots on because they were, the first scene that I did, we're on top of the White House and I'm doing a big long speech. It's just before lunch and my pants split wide open. And, you know, okay, I guess that's lunch. So it was different in that I wanted to showcase my physique, and then I ended up wearing this stuff that hides it. That was challenging. But to be on a film of that scale and with that much of a following, yeah, man, it's a little stressful because you know that everybody's going to have a certain view of how Albert Wesker should be and this, that, and the other. I got spoiled, man. Like you do a movie like that, you want them all to be like that. So it was a learning experience, industry wise, sort of finding your place, you know, because when you first book the role, you think, okay, man, that's it. I'm gonna be famous after this. Yeah, it turns out nobody cares. Get back to work. So it was a good series of lessons that as an actor, you're always looking for work. There is never one job that you get that makes you. So I guess that was a good lesson to learn. I was just going up.
Excellent. Sean, our time grows short. Unfortunately, we could really talk to you all day. You've been an absolute delight today. Everyone, please make sure to go check out Here for the Blood. It hits Screenbox on February 9th. One last thing, Sean. Is there anything else? You know, where can people follow you? Anything else you'd like to promote that's coming up for you?
I have another film coming out at the end of February called Afterwards. I'm the lead in that. It's a dark spiritual drama being stuck in essentially purgatory, a winter wasteland. And I'm not sure where that's being released, but I've been informed that it's coming out at the end of the month. I have another movie called Campton Manor, which is apparently coming out in May. I think there's maybe a slight theatrical release in March. And other than that, I'm on Instagram trying to be a trainer for people who want to get jacked and lean and feel better. So it's it, man. I'm just trying to do what we can to survive and just keep showing up every day, right? That's the only way we win.
Absolutely. And I think the more and more people that see this movie will definitely want to get some training for you, because I know I definitely want to after seeing this one. So once again, everyone, that is Here for Blood, February 9th on Screenbox. Please check it out. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.